In 2017, we saw the original release of the masterpiece, The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. And now, in 2025, and with the release of the Nintendo Switch 2, we have the upgraded versions of both the Breath of the Wild and its sequel, Tears of the Kingdom. But just how much of an upgrade are these upgraded games? So guys, today is the day we got this guy in the mail, the Nintendo Switch 2, and along with it comes some upgraded games, one of them being one of my favorite games of all time, The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. So I thought it'd be fun to make a quick video going into these upgraded versions of both Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom to see just how much these games really are upgraded. But either way guys, I hope you enjoyed this video as much as I've enjoyed making it for you guys, and let me know down in the comments, are you excited for the Nintendo Switch 2? Did you pick one up? What games did you pick up? Let me know down in the comments. I can't wait to read those. But guys, let's dive into the video. So kicking this video off with the iconic opening vista from The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild as it appeared on the original Nintendo Switch, and as you can see, this is still a gorgeous looking game even 8 years after its launch. But as you can see by the Nintendo Switch 2 version of Breath of the Wild, the game still looks fantastic, but if you were looking for some major visual improvements, you might be disappointed. As with this comparison, I was primarily looking for improved draw distances, but any differences I could mention I feel would be giving Nintendo a bit too much credit, considering this is an upgrade that we are actually paying for. But when it comes to the visual improvements, the biggest enhancement when it comes to the visuals is that of the resolution, whereas as you can see here when we look at Link as he appears in Tears of the Kingdom on the original Switch, that game ran with a variable resolution between 540p and 720p, whereas on the Switch 2 version of Tears of the Kingdom, as you can see, the image quality is a bit sharper, the edges along the sides of the character look much more clean, and they're not as jagged as what we saw on the original Switch. And speaking of resolution, this increased the resolution to Breath of the Wild from the original Switch at 720p versus the Switch 2 version at 1080p or even 4K docked is especially noticeable when looking at things in the far distance. Take the Temple of Time, for example. When viewing it on the original Nintendo Switch, the edges of the structure are much more jagged and less clean looking than what we see with the higher resolution on the Nintendo Switch 2 version of Breath of the Wild. It may not be transformative, but it does look noticeably better. But one improvement I was sure we were going to see when it comes to these upgraded versions of both Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom is an increased draw distance when it comes to the geometry of the world, as both of these games had pretty noticeable pop-in issues, as you can see by these bushes and rocks that are rendering pretty close to the player. But as you can see in the upgraded versions of these games, these issues have not been touched at all, and they still render just as close to the player as they always have, which, no lie, is kind of disappointing. But outside of the resolution, the biggest improvement when it comes to the upgraded versions of Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom is that of the performance, as never before, at least on console, have we been able to play these games at a locked 60 frames per second. And I'm telling you, once you play these games at 60 frames per second, it's going to be very hard going back to the original Nintendo Switch and playing these games at 30 frames per second, and even sometimes dipping below that 30 frames per second mark, as this is without a doubt the best way to play these games, and it's never been smoother than what we see here on the Nintendo Switch 2. Now, with this next comparison, I found the results pretty interesting. So basically what you're seeing here is a comparison of the load times between me loading my Breath of the Wild save on a Nintendo Switch Lite versus loading the exact same save on the Nintendo Switch 2. And as you can see here on the original Switch, it loaded my save in about 8 seconds. Now switching over to the Nintendo Switch 2, no fast forwarding whatsoever. I don't want you to think there's any shenanigans or anything, but it actually took 2 seconds longer, clocking it in about 10 seconds to load this exact same save. And I honestly don't know what to think about that, but you know, it is what it is. And moving on, and just because I wanted to keep things fair, I also wanted to compare the draw distance to see if there's any improvements between the original Tears of the Kingdom and the upgraded version of Tears of the Kingdom on the Nintendo Switch 2, and I couldn't think of a better place to do this comparison than in Freefall, so here we are. And as you can see by Tears of the Kingdom on the original Switch, as I said at the beginning of the video, this is a fantastic looking game, and the upgraded version on the Nintendo Switch 2 is still a fantastic looking game. But when it comes to the actual visuals outside of the resolution, you're not going to see much of, if any, improvements when it comes to draw distance, art, or anything like that. It's just mainly resolution and performance with the frame rate. It looks great, it feels good to play, but as far as overhauling any of the visuals, that's just not what you're going to see here. But I did notice one significant improvement when it comes to the performance of Tears of the Kingdom that I wanted to mention in this video, because in the original Tears of the Kingdom on the original Nintendo Switch, whenever you were using Ultra Hand to build something, whenever you were moving that project around, the frame rate on the original Nintendo Switch would just tank down into the below the 30s and into the 20s, and it did not look great. Whereas in the upgraded version of Tears of the Kingdom from the Nintendo Switch 2, the frame rate does not tank down whenever you're moving your projects around with Ultra Hand, and it actually stays consistent at 60 frames per second, which is an improvement that I was happy to see, as it always kind of bothered me in the original Nintendo Switch, and it's nice to see it improved here. And with my final comparison in this video, I wanted to compare the load times when loading a save in Tears of the Kingdom exactly like I did with Breath of the Wild, and interestingly, or uninterestingly rather, the Nintendo Switch 2 version loads in half the time versus the original Nintendo Switch, which is how it should be, whereas if you remember earlier in the video when I compared Breath of the Wild, it actually took a couple seconds longer to load the Nintendo Switch 2 version versus the version on the Switch Lite, which is interesting, but I mean, what other rules? I don't know anymore. Well, guys, you made it to the end. Thank you for watching this direct comparison of the upgraded versions of the original Breath of the Wild versus its upgraded versions on the Nintendo Switch 2. And I hope you guys enjoyed this video. And at the end of the day, I mean, the Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom are fantastic games. Breath of the Wild in particular is one of my favorite games of all time. So being able to play these games at a higher frame rate with higher resolution is a great thing. I mean, I love it. This is the definitive best way to play these games. But I find it interesting with how, other than performance outside of frame rate and resolution, the improvements we get here, what makes this game worth charging for the upgrade versus other games on the Nintendo Switch 2 that got their upgrades for free, like Super Mario Odyssey or Pokemon Scarlet. Like, those games got free upgrades for the Nintendo Switch 2, but they're charging us for upgrades for Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. And I don't know, I think they thought more people would buy this, and they're probably right. But at the end of the day, guys, two masterpiece games, $10 for upgrading the performance and the resolution. Do I wish there was more improvements here? Of course, especially since, like I said, we actually have to pay for these upgrades. But at the end of the day, if you're shelling out the money for a Nintendo Switch 2, I mean, what's another, I mean, that's probably Nintendo's mindset. What's another $10 for the best versions of one of the greatest games of all time? I mean, do I wish it was free? Yeah, but it's not. Is the upgrade worth it? Let me know down in the comments. I can't wait to read those. And honestly, with the little logo that I put on top of these of the entire video showing you whether this was a Switch 1 game or a Switch 2 game, you think that was for you? No, that was for both of us. I did that so that I could keep track of the two versions while editing this video, because at times it was kind of hard to tell, and that does kind of suck, but here we are, guys. Let me know, are you excited about the Nintendo Switch 2? Did you pick one up? What games did you pick up? Let me know down in the comments. But guys, that's all I have for this video, and I'll catch you guys on the next one. See ya.